In this exercise, we'll be taking a page that already has some content in it, and we'll be creating a layout using cascading style sheets. And in particular, we'll use something called div tags. Right now, we're looking at a page that has some content on it already. And we're going to take this page and we're going to separate it into a banner, a sidebar, a main content area, and we'll actually import a nav bar from another file here a little later on, and we'll position it just below the banner. I've got a finished version of the file over here. Let me just give you a view of that. And I'll actually just click live mode so that you can see what it would look like. And I'll just reduce that so you see the whole page. And as you can see here, I've got a banner. And I've actually added a background graphic to it, which is basically a slice of that red section. And I've continued it on infinitely as a background to that section known as a div tag. Then I brought in some buttons as a banner, put those inside of a div tag and positioned it just below the banner. And then we took the existing content on the page and put it over here in a sidebar, and the remaining content, which was the main content, we kept it on the page using margins and so on to position it accordingly. So let me just close this file now, and I guess we'll start with that fresh new file. First thing I'll do, I guess, is establish a new style sheet and a new style, and we'll start with the banner. And what I propose to do is to add a graphic to the background and also positioning properties so that we can attach that ultimately to the div tag. So the way I'll start is I'll just highlight that image on the stage here, and I'll go to my cascading styles and I'll create a new style, new CSS rule, and we'll go to ID and we'll give it a name, which means that once this is attached to a style element, it will be unique to that one style element, and in this case that will be a div tag. So we start these with the number sign and we'll call it banner. I do want to create a new style sheet, as I said. So I'll go new style sheet, and when I click OK, it will ask me where do I want to save it. That is my site root, but if I'm not sure, I can click site root. I'll call this style sheet stylesheet.css, and then I'll save it, and it'll be prompting me to create the first style to go into that style sheet. And here we are. So as I said, this is going to be attached to the div tag banner. So I'll start with the background, which will address that graphic that I want to have running infinitely on the horizontal. So I do have a graphic in my images folder, so I'll go to background image, click browse, and it's called bg_banner. Click open, and under background repeat, I have 4 options: no repeat, repeat, which means it would repeat in a grid pattern according to its size, or repeat vertically or horizontally. I want it to repeat horizontally, which is repeat X. So I click that, and I'm good to go on the background. I still need to address where this div tag will be positioned on the screen, and I do want to position it in the upper left corner. So I will go over to positioning, and when I want it to be fixed in a certain spot on the page, I use what's called an absolute position. You can see we have fixed, relative, and static, and we'll work with these a little bit later on, but for now we're going to work with what's called absolute positioned div tags. So we set it to absolute, and for width I'm just going to make it 100% of the page, which means that that background is going to continue on the page no matter how big or small the browser window is. So under width, I'll actually type it in 100, and I'll choose percent as my unit. And placement, I just need to affect the top and the left, which will be the 0, 0 coordinates. So 0 pixels on the top, and left 0 pixels, and I'll hit my tab key to enter that. And I'll leave everything else blank. And once I'm finished with this, I click OK. So I'm just going to slide this down here a bit, if I can. And I'll close global styles, and we can see style sheets. So this is the new style we created inside of the new style sheet. Now I still have to connect that to the graphic. I've created the style, but I haven't identified the graphic yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap a div tag around this graphic, which will adopt the name banner. And everything associated with that style called banner will apply to the content of the div tag. So again, highlighting the graphic, the image, I go up to Insert, Layout Objects, Div Tag. Then I click on that. And we have a number of selections, but we want to have it set to wrap around selections so that it will contain that image inside of the div tag. Now we've already created an ID in our style sheet, so we just need to link to it. ID banner, and it's the only one. If we had more, they would appear in this as a list. So I've connected the ID banner to the div tag, which is wrapping around the content of the thing I highlighted, which happens to be the image. Click OK, and there you see it. There's the extended background, and the div tag is holding it in the upper corner. And if I click here, you can see the blue marquee, which represents the div tag. And if I highlight it on the edge, you can see it highlighted in the code view, as well as down here in my tag selector. So I can always go and select it like that as well. And that's our first div tag, so we've positioned it and added some extra features, which has to do with creating a repeating background attached to that div tag. Now at this point, I'll just show you another feature that we have at our disposal, which have to do with these absolute position div tags. If you look over here next to my Styles tab, there's one called AP Elements. Sometimes when you're working on a very complex page, you might want to hide some of these things while you're working. So what you see here is a list of all the AP div tags that are on the page, and we only have the one so far. And you can see when I roll over it, I actually get a pop-up window with a lot of pertinent information. But back in my panel here, I can simply click under the eyeball to turn off its visibility, and you saw it actually disappears, so it's not affecting the page when it's been turned off. Or I can turn it back on by forcing it on, or I can leave it at what's called default, which really means that it will stay on as well, but it hasn't been forced using code. So again, I can highlight it there, and I can see it highlighted on the page as well. Let's say I had a long list of them here. I can go through and again select them this way and turn them on and off as needed, for authoring purposes. Okay, I'll go back to this tab though, so it's available to us, and I'll just click away. Now the next thing I want to do is create a div tag for the content which is meant to be the sidebar. And in fact, I will go back to this tag for a second and turn it off, because some of the stuff was underneath it. As you can see here, today's headlines and these 3 punctuated points are intended to go in the sidebar. And when I actually turn on that banner, it's covering up some of that stuff. So let's go back to CSS styles. We'll create a new style for the sidebar, and I may actually have to turn that off so that I can access the content to highlight it, so that I can attribute it to the div tag. So let's start by creating a new style, new CSS rule. We'll again stay on the ID, #, sidebar. Save it in the stylesheet.css. Click OK. Now this is for the sidebar. So we're going to just simply define some positioning at this time. So I'll go straight down to positioning. And again, absolute for position. The width this time will be dictated with pixels. So I'll just type in 15, or rather 150 pixels, and it's on pixels now. I want to put it 150 pixels down from the top, but I want it to be 0 pixels from the left. So under placement, top, I'll say 150 pixels. So it'll be 150 pixels from the top of the page, but it will be hugging the left of the page because I typed in 0 for left. I click OK, and I can see now that I have another ID in my style sheet called Sidebar. So as I said, I'll hide this for now, and I'll highlight all of the content that I intend to go inside of that sidebar. So with that highlighted, again, I'll wrap it with a div tag. So we go Insert, Layout Objects, Div Tag, Wrap Around Selection, and under ID, I choose Sidebar. And the other one wasn't there because it was spoken for. And I click OK. And lo and behold, there it goes, 150 pixels down from the top, 0 pixels from the left, and the width of the sidebar is 150 pixels. And when I turn that other element back on, it's going to force this other content down. There we go. I'll just set it back to default. Okay, so we still need to address this other content, but so far you can see that my sidebar is in place and my banner is in place. Now our next step is to create a ID for some styles for what will be the main content. So I'm going to go over to my styles, click New CSS Rule, and this time we'll call it main, # main, under ID of course, and to be saved in that same stylesheet.css. Then I click OK, and it's asking me to set up some styles. I'm going to work with the box category for this so that we can actually pull it out past where the sidebar goes, and of course below where the banner and ultimately where the nav will go. So under the box category, I'm going to work with the margins. I'm going to turn off same for all, and for top, I happen to have figured this out earlier, but it's 115 pixels from the top. From the right, we'll push it 10 pixels, and on the left, we'll push it 175 pixels. Meaning it should, if you do your math, it'll be 25 pixels past the 150, which is the sidebar. So left 175 pixels. Now under padding, I'm just going to say turn off same for all, and on the left we're going to pad it with 20 pixels, which means the text will be 20 pixels away from what the border would be. Now we're going to, speaking of the border, we're going to go and style the border. So let's click on the border category, turn off same for all. Under left, I want to create a dotted line. So I'll choose dotted, turn off same for all for the rest of these as well. And the width will be 2 pixels, and the color will be white. And I click OK. And I'm going to actually need to hide these elements again so that I can highlight all of that content. So AP elements, turn these off, and then actually click before the M in monkey. And highlight that. And then wrap that in the div tag. Insert, Layout Objects, Div Tag, and we'll just choose main and click OK. And there we go. I'll actually bring these back into visibility, and as you can see here, our layout is starting to come into shape. You notice up here there's an asterisk next to the file name as well as the style sheet. It means they both need to be saved. If I click on this style sheet, you can actually see the contents of the style sheet, and you can even edit it right here. It's an external file, but I could edit it from here. These are the 2 supporting style sheets that are linked to this file. I'll leave it, but you can see here the styles that we've created through the dialog box. And if you know your styles well, by typing them in, you're very welcome to apply them by hand as well. So let me just move this back here a bit. And I think I'll just do a save all, which will save the file and all its associated style sheets. Save all. There we go. And we'll continue now. Now looking at this page, I'm seeing that the sidebar is looking a little bit low, so I'm actually going to go in and make a manual adjustment to that div tag. I can actually click on it here. And if I click on the line, as you see, the handles appear along the sides and the corners, so I can literally grab one of those handles and just manually move that up. So I'm just going to move this up a bit here until I like how it looks. And I'll basically make it flush, I guess. Actually, bring it up a little higher. There we go. I could also have done that using numbers down in my properties window. Okay, so I'll just save that. I'll save all actually, because that's actually a style sheet that's being that's dictating the positioning of the sides and the location on the screen. Now at this point I'm going to create another new div tag, although this one's going to be created empty, and then I'm going to copy some content out of this file called navigation, and I'll paste it into the existing div tag. So it is meant to host a navigation up in this general area right here. And the way I'll do that is I'll actually nest it inside of the banner div tag. In other words, it's going to be like it's grouped, and it's going to be like a child of that div tag. So anywhere that div tag goes on the screen, the div tag with the navigation in it will follow it around. It'll be a subset of it, if you will. So let's just start by creating a new style. And I'll go ID, and we'll name this one nav. So number sign nav. Again, save it inside of that same style sheet. Click OK. And I'm going to set some of the positioning for that now. So I'll go down to positioning. Again, we'll make it absolute. And the width, to accommodate all that, I happen to know will work within 455 pixels. And hit my tab key. And placement, and again it's relative to the banner div tag that we're going to put it inside, but placement from the top of that tag will be 65 pixels from the top, and from the left we'll push it over 251 pixels. Again, this was predetermined in Photoshop prior to creating this page. I think that should do it. I'll click OK. And now I'll actually insert the div tag into the page. So insert layout objects, div tag. And this one's a little bit different, as I said, because we want to nest it inside an existing div tag. So for insert at, we're going to choose before end of tag. That means it's going to drop it in just before the end of the div tag. So before end of tag, and then we have to determine which tag. And in this case we want to drop it inside of the banner tag just before the end of the tag, and it will be like the child following the parent around the page. Then we attach the ID that we created called nav, and we should be good to go. Click OK, and you can see it appeared up here. If I zoom in, now Dreamweaver just puts in some empty content as a placeholder, and I'll be replacing that very soon. So I'm going to get the proper content out of this other file called navigation. So I'll double click that to open. I'll just click inside anywhere and then go edit, select all, and copy, and then go back to my layout HTML page. So I'm just going to triple click inside of the content here, which highlights all of it, and as you can see here in the code view, it's highlighted that placeholder text. All I really need to do now is paste on top of that. So I go edit, paste, and there is my navigation bar. Let me save my file. Now just to show you the effects of having this div tag nested within the other, I'll actually highlight the whole div tag. I'll click it on the line here, and you can see when I highlight the banner div tag, the nav div tag got highlighted as well, because it is now sort of grouped together. Anywhere one goes, the other goes. And if I actually nudge down that banner, you see that the nav div tag goes along with it, and it assumes a relative position as if it was glued to the banner. So let me just put that back up to 0. But basically that's what nesting a div tag does, is it attaches or groups it to the other div tag that it's nested within. And test it in a browser. Preview in Firefox. Oh, I think it's referring to my style sheet needing to be saved, and I will say yes. And there we have it. And you can see here when the page actually manifests itself in the browser that graphic is continuous into infinity towards the right, going on the x-axis. Here is the navigation bar, which is attached to the banner div tag. And I think I'm just going to make a fine-tuning adjustment. I'll just grab one of the handles on the sidebar when I go back and just widen it a bit. But here you have it. Our whole page is laid out using div tags. We didn't use one table or table cell to create this layout. And the beauty of it is, using div tags, it's a lot easier to make changes after we've started it. Like, I can literally go in and grab it by hand and move things around. I'm just going to do a little fine-tuning, as I said, with the sidebar here. I'll just move this over a bit and slide this over. And basically I'll highlight that and I'll move it up a little bit more. And I'll make this line flush with the dotted line. And you can see how easy this is, and it's quite beautiful to be able to do it this easily. And let's say that's good. Let me just save all. And we'll test that quickly in the browser. So let's go preview in Firefox. And there we have it. And that looks pretty elegant now. So again, we've got 4 div tags to do the layout of this page. We didn't use any tables or table cells at all to create this layout. And the beauty again is that it's quite flexible if I want to make changes. So I've got the banner, the nav, the main, and the sidebar. And I'd like you to create the exact same thing with the files provided today.